So I asked for a beat'em-up that does something new, and here it is. Araknie is here to present to you Shadow Force. Oh, ominous! This is the last self-published arcade release by Technos Japan. They tried to survive by releasing on some other platforms for another 3 years, but they had to close. People wanted to play fighting games and lose their quarters to input reading bullshit instead of playing a well-made video game. You can guess I don't enjoy how the CPU works in fighting games. I am very subtle. I better explain this stuff. Anyway, I want to explain first that this is the worldwide release of the board, but the version 3 of it. I've never found this information anyway, but you can see this screen here. This is known as an overly complicated 6-button layout in American arcades, made to appeal to a focus test saying that Americans wanted more fighting games and no more good ones instead. In the original Japanese release, this was a 3-button affair, and it was the joystick that decided if you were doing a mid, low, and high punch or kick. Much better, right? Also, the original USA release got fighting game sections between stages with normal enemies as bosses with new moves. Lose those and it's game over. I didn't record that, you're not seeing that here, right? You're not seeing even me wrestling with the control cider, that is true. How can that be? The board of this game is called World version 3 for a reason. They imported all the Japanese features aside from the story into the English language release. Nobody talks about this. All the people reviewing this game, text or video, talk about the 6-buttoner version, and here I'm gonna prove we got the good one also. Just be sure to play this one instead and you'll have plenty of fun. But what are we talking about? What's the deal with Shadow Force? The story here is that 3 creatures and a human are seeking revenge against an organization that has ruined their lives in one way or the other. You'll get slight hints of it in the character selection screen, but not much else. Even the endings for the characters are mostly lacking in anything more than a couple screens and lines of dialogue, with only one of them getting what they wanted out of it. The others prefer to go back to their business and forget it ever happened. Understandable, it was a pretty stressful affair. But let's see these characters. They don't share a single move between each other. But they do work like fighting game ones, like we said earlier, so we get an original set between all of them. So, Kai already battled the teaser organization, has suffered major injuries and could only be saved by becoming part cyborg. Also, his skills involve being the last descendant of the Iga clan, so he's a ninja. You get from this that he's strong but also fast, making him a balanced fighter. You get a decently ranged weapon instead of your fist, and you can use that to grab goobers from a safe distance. Also with a nice range to your leg attacks, and of course you can combine those with your staff. I like him very much, but I will not describe him or the others further. All the protagonists, coincidentally there are once again 4, are so very different that it would be more than an essay than a review, and I don't do those. So many moves and I feel like I haven't found them all. Massive replayability, but not only from this front. More on that later. Tengu is a grappler. This guy is a full cyborg from top to bottom. He apparently was the leader of a resistance movement against Teaser, but is now the only one remaining. No weapons for this guy or he wouldn't fit his initial description. So you get to throw a lot of people in many different ways and throw a lot of short punches. Somebody would call them jabs, but you have long legs to compensate for that. Another good character all around. This guy has more grabs than anybody else in the game, and they certainly come in handy. All grabs from everybody work also on certain bosses. Only some of the really big size and not humanoid shapes are impossible to get. He's quite slow, that's his only fault, but with this amount of power you should be able to compensate quite nicely. But now here comes Coyote, and he's my only sore point against this game. This poor guy became a beastman because of a promised reconstruction surgery performed by the teaser organization didn't go as promised. They quite flat out lied. He realized this and escaped the brainwashing, but he can't ever go back to being human. Somebody needs to die for this. The entire gang needs to die. This guy is considered a tank, but they did him wrong. Because he can't really tank the hits. He gets stunned. This is just the wrong way of doing a character of this type. You need to have him at least not get stunned unless you get hit by a full combo or a special attack. His attacks are quite long, but since he's the slowest of them all, and you get stopped in every place ever by the smallest of hits, you rarely will get any satisfaction from his playstyle. This is just another terrible tank. How can they get him wrong so many times? This is 2 years after Aggar from Final Fight. It's getting embarrassing at this point. At least Ninja Baseball Batman gave us satisfaction recently on that front. Blue Knight is the only human of the group. She is a double sword wielder and she's the only one who doesn't get any backstory. That is certainly strange since she's very fast but also really strong. Would be nice to know how that came to be. She can attack double the times in the same amount of seconds. Also she moves really great and does some impressive acrobatic combos. She also was designed to be allergic to pants. But yeah, she's another one with weapons, so their proficiency depends more on you rather than your power. Also, you got nice range and combos with your legs. You honestly get a full range of attacks, and I didn't really find any weak points. Maybe she has less health, but I can't confirm that. And now it comes the feature that revolutionizes the genre, by taking its good idea from Avenging Spirit, if you can believe it. Oh yeah, you can possess enemies but without any penalty this time around. By pressing button 1 and 2 at the same time, aka whatever you have set into being your kick and punch, and being close enough to one of the many non-boss enemies, you can literally take over. They all have their moves, some are more in-depth than others, but surely less than the main 4. Also, they are granted even one special move that's unique to them. Most of them are quite easy to pull off. You will last in this form until you die or finish a stage, then you'll go back to being yourself before the next one starts. But you can also go back to your main one whenever you want just by pressing those 2 buttons again. So if you want to try somebody new, you can at any time, and the game doesn't punish you for it. This is a fantastic feature, but we gotta admit it's once again weird to see in a 45 minutes game. You can kinda tell that Technos Japan were desperate for their life as a studio at this point and tried really hard to put out a game that will get great word of mouth. One that would be spoken of as the next revolution of beat'em-ups. Maybe they hoped they would be talked about like single-player fighting games. Because of the depth put into this title resembles them in many ways. And it's a weird one because it also has branching paths. Told you they really tried, but they are not really effective. I honestly believe it would have been better if they didn't try with the stage selection you get at the beginning and allowed you to play all stages on every playthrough. What's the point of having those branching paths if they don't affect the final stage you get, the final boss, or the ending? Because they don't here. Not a single thing changes. Sure, it has much better gameplay than Melfan Stories, but it's missing a lot of what propped the game up instead. Also, you are kinda forced to possess your enemies, because the protagonists are much weaker than any of them, at least in terms of raw power. Sure, they compensated with a variety of moves and dodges that certainly help, but on such a short game you really don't have time to learn them. And the lack of any secret content because of your choices of initial stage doesn't make this really replayable more than the 4 times you need to see their endings. It's a weird one, and not entirely in a good way. Also suffers from an inconsistency in art direction. What you see here looks good in most of the cases, but it seems to change artist from level to level. For example, this forest looks almost hand-drawn, while the city stage seems more like 2D computer graphics, more typical of the time. It will alternate between these two styles all the time, with the final one being another one entirely. A painterly look for this completely alien looking stage. If you follow this channel, you know that lack of visual cohesion throws me off, so yeah, you can imagine how it felt playing this game. I had to really concentrate to focus in also recognizing the amazing character animations and variety of them, since every non-boss had to be playable. That led to the game to being one of the hardest beat-em ups I've ever played, since everybody was so well realized. But since they were so, they had their tells and ways to figure them out, making it hard just by default. I honestly had long moments where I didn't die at all because I understood the correct character or possession to use at the time. It's a game of intuition and reactivity, and I like that in a beat'em up. It has a pretty steady flow without flooding you with enemies that attack you at the same time too much, and no more than 3. They know they made a hard game, and they made it so it gives you time to think. That's not expected in arcade titles, so it has to be commended. Musically it was pretty decent, but nothing outstanding. Another case where half of it felt incredible, while the rest you could really forget about it while listening. For example, they use 2 boss themes and alternate between them. The first one you're gonna hear is tense, rhythmic and full of forward movement. It's gonna pump you up right and proper. The second one, and you're gonna hear this also from the final boss, is instead something really dramatic. It seems like it's building up and building up to an amazing riff, but it never comes. But it's all weirdly paced like this. I was battling some incredible robots and creatures in a lab and everything was exploding, and all I'm hearing is some really muted, barely tense music. It gives you momentum to just rip it from you as soon as it can. But I love this title in many ways despite its shortcomings. So I really suggested everybody plays Shadow Force because it's a surefire 8 out of 10. It's clearly a game made to appeal to the rise of fighting games and their fans, and therefore that's why every character gets a set list of moves. Unfortunately, first impressions killed any chance of success this game might have had, for those USA market changes and additions took over people when talking about it. So much that this revision got completely ignored. It also sports a pretty terrible character in the form of Coyote, and that's why I can't really consider it better than this. If you wanna see me play the games that I will review plus some extra stuff, catch me on Twitch at Araknie Retro. It's my natural habitat, you see. Until next time, ciao ciao!